on tape and
Yes,
go back and
because
listen
you
to
take
it.
notes, maybe you
lose
lose
something.
something.
Yeah, well, it
That
was,
way you don't lose.
it was a long time ago. I can't really remember how long. Was it 9 years, Gloria? Or more?
It's more because
About 12
because
years
we figured
ago.
out that you had Mr. Perkins in 78
I
or
had Mr.
79.
Perkins.
How long
I
was
took
Mr.
him down
Perkins?
to Scottish in 1978.
So,
And
it
Mr.
must have been
Perkins was first
77 then.
So it must have been
So,
77.
So that's a long time ago, whenever that was.
I took him down as a tiny wee.
And we were just clearing the plot. Am I talking into the right thing? And it was thick bush, and I had one of the sort of tribes that love animals, luckily, who was clearing the bush, and he came up to me and he said, "There's a very funny looking cat down there that's had some kittens." And I said, well, leave it, you know, it's all right, just clear around it, don't hurt it, and whatever. And I didn't think any more about it. And about lunchtime he came up again and he said, "The mother is there. Come and look at her because she's very peculiar." So I went down and there was this face, is all I could see. It was under a tree stump in a hole. I could just see this face with these enormous eyes and these huge ears with little hairs on the top. And she did look rather beautiful, but she was very wild, and when she saw me she jumped out and she ran away. And I looked at her and I thought, well, I've never seen markings like that, because there's those special markings like we still have on the cats. And she ran away, and I saw all the kittens were marked exactly the same, with that same U, you know, when you look at the back of the cat you can see that loop on the markings there. And so I picked up a male and a female kitten, and they still had a wet tummy button. And I took them up to the house. They were completely blind. They were just born that day, I think. And I had some goats, and I've always been quite good on rearing baby animals because I've done it all my life. And I managed to rear them, and eventually they grew into great big beautiful cats, which you saw on the television. And then I mated them together, and all their kittens were exactly the same as they were. And I thought they were rather different because they didn't really tame properly, and they always used to walk along with in the old days we had a lawn in front of the house where the veranda is now, and there was grass, and all these cats used to walk along with their tails in the air eating the grass, like, you know, grazing. And I thought, that's very funny, they're very funny cats. And then they didn't behave like cats. They used to fling themselves on the ground like a cheetah and lie like this, which they still do. And they used to not eat birds. They used to eat bugs, grasshoppers, butterflies, anything like that. And at night, when the lights were on, and there were moths round the lights, they used to go up and down like ping pong balls outside, you know, eating the moths. And so I thought they were just rather special cats, and I never said anything to anyone. And then we took a man out called Bill Langridge, who was a vet, who was working in Sokoke Forest for the veterinary department. He was actually collecting ticks or something funny for the veterinary department, and he was trapping these animals in the Sokoke Forest. And he came up to me and he said, "Where did you get those cats?" And I said, "Well, I found them in the plot, and I just reared the babies, and they're rather special and beautiful." And he said, "Well, I've been in the Sokoke Forest for 3 years, catching all these animals that live there and collecting the ticks to find diseases and things." And he said, those cats live in the forest, and he said I haven't been able to capture them at all. So I've laid traps and trails, and he said they live in the trees and they're very difficult to catch.
Did he have a name for them?
He called them the white-shouldered cat because when they were crouching down they had this white piece here. And so then I got quite excited about them because I thought that as they were producing, all their babies were exactly the same as the parents. And then they had this, I was saying to Gloria, they had this black spot. I don't know if this is in any other, is that in any other cat or not? I'm not really sure, but all these babies came out with their black spot here.
That was striped down here.
And they have a big wide stripe there, and then they have little black spots on either side of the nostril here, and a fairly long teardrop. And they were very cheetah-like in all their mannerisms, and except that they used to walk with their tails in the air, like opossums. But I always thought they were rather special cats, but no one got very excited about them except for Bill Langridge. And then Barbara Simpson, who I hope you'll get on your tape recorder as well, who is a scientific woman and writes books and things on flora and fauna and seaweed and all sorts of things. She went into the forest one day and she actually saw either one or two of these cats deep in the forest, and the very same markings. And so that tied up with Bill Langridge, who'd also seen them. So then I got quite excited about it, and I jumped up and down, but nobody took much notice until I met Gloria, and she said, well, I think they're wildcats and they're beautiful, and I would like to take a pair back. You had, was it 2 females and a male originally?
Well, unfortunately, it was only a male and a female.
A male and a female. And took them, and that was the beginning of the
we talked about it too.
beginning of the breed. They were young ones. Beginning of the breed in Denmark.
Jenny in Missouri.
And then Gloria really took on from there and bred them. I mean, I've always kept them at home, and I've tried to keep them fairly as clean as I can in their breeding. And any male that I've seen that is not one of mine is hunted down by all my Africans and disposed of.
Jenny puts a price on their heads.
And they all have a price on their heads. So my own cats stay on my plot, and anything else sticks its nose in, and they have their heads cut off. Except for one day, I was talking to this Austrian geneticist, however you call it, and he said that I should breed, if I wanted to get an outcross, I should get the same shaped cat, but pure black. And as luck would have it, this absolutely beautiful, pure black cat, which had no white on it at all, and was quite lovely, and the same shape, he came chatting up all the girls, so I let him do so. And so that brought in a bit of different blood, but the babies were then very much darker markings. You know, they were almost...
Probably will get that gray brown.
But that'll go away. A few generations down the road, that'll go away.
That was about 3 generations back. And since when, I've tried to keep them fairly, you know...
I don't think I've ever bring Joe.
Any of my own breeding I've kept here, but probably, you know, they have had the odd outcross, but never with anything horrible. I mean, they're mainly in the same shape and type of cat.
And I remember the first time I saw them, I just thought, oh, there's some very pretty cats, you know. Because Jenny just had the mothers and fathers. And then the next time I came down, Jenny had 2 litters. And they were both about 6 or 7 kittens in each litter. And they were all exactly alike. And I thought, oh my God, this is, you know, something special. Because you can't possibly just have some
You can't breed
house
them all.
cat or something and have them all coming out with this perfect classic African pattern, you know. And all of them, all these kittens, you know. So I thought, oh. And we talked about it, and I said, well, I'll try to take 2 back and see if I can get them registered as a race. So I brought them back and got a hold of our geneticist in Denmark, and she thought, you know, oh well, this tourist has picked up this cat and everything. She didn't expect much. And I came with them, and she went absolutely bananas when she saw them. You know, she said, oh, you know,
They
these
are
are wonderful.
special.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And I think, you know, Gloria's had kittens since then, as from me, and I'm hoping this new one is going to be quite a humdinger. What's his name?
Cassie.
Kazi.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
You were telling me that there was a Swahili name for him? Because when you were asking
No,
in the forest,
that's
they were
what
saying...
David said
Oh,
that.
David?
Yeah, David and I discovered that out in the forest because we went around interviewing people who were living on the edges of the forest, and we took pictures and said, have you seen a cat like this? And there was a lot of confusion, and they said, oh, that's a leopard, and we said, oh, it's not a leopard, you know, it's a small cat. And we had trouble looking at the pictures, you know, but we explained to them it was a small cat and it looked like that and it had that pattern, and then they said, oh, Katzonzo. So that's what they called it, Katzonzo.
How would you spell that?
Khadzonzo.
Oh, try it again without the kids screaming.
Yeah. Khadzonzo. Katzonzo.
Then you were telling me they were called the black-footed cat or something? Is it these?
No.
No, these are something
All
else.
I was saying was that somebody said they were probably related to the black-footed cat, but on looking at the black-footed cat's shape, it's a completely different shape.
Oh, okay.
It's a short, fat cat, but these cats do have black feet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of their things.
When I
but
first brought them back, I talked to the zoologist in Denmark, and he's been in the Sokoke forest looking at the fruit bat, because he's a Batman.
The bat no more, Robin.
And first of all, he sent me a picture of the African wildcat. You know, which is
black-footed cat.
no, this they
No,
call
the
it's called the
spotted cat.
African wildcat.
Yeah, it's all different.
And,
They've got thick, heavy bodies.
Yeah, and he had a very scientific book, which you can't get anywhere, a really big one. He sent me photocopies of this African cat. And I could see there was a slight resemblance, but it was much more cobby, and it was a striped tabby, you know. And he thought perhaps it was that one. But then he came over to my farm, and he saw the cats, and he said, oh no, this is something entirely different. And he's sure that they're a true wild cat. He's more sure than I am. So I've always suspected they were a feral cat. Maybe they came from Egypt or something. We've got these ships coming in with a monsoon.
It's just so funny that they're all exactly the same marking. Or, you know, when I was first breeding them, I never got a funny one. I mean, they were all exactly the same, with that same number 6 on the side and that same mark that you photographed. You know, kind of upside down U on each side of the 3 stripes.
Yeah, and then the band of spots on the stomach.
And the stomachs are spotted, and of course they had
And then
this
no
black
markings
spot here.
up here, and then no markings in between the back legs.
And they just seem to be such a typical breed.
And
you
then
know.
their voices, you know.
Yes.
You heard their voices, yeah. Their voices
And the way
are
they
sweet, yes.
acted, I mean, they threw themselves down and, you know, rather like a cheetah. They didn't lie like a pussycat like this. They sort of flung themselves down with their heads up.
Also, the pouring is different.
Mm.
And
They
these
are
voices,
different.
you see, when I take them to a show, I put them in front of the microphone. Everybody comes running, you know. I see really strange guttural sort of meow, you know.
Yeah.
They discuss
Because that little Abyssinian I've got's got a completely different voice.
So with the Egyptian Mal sounds like these guys.
Does it? Yeah.
The what?
The Egyptian Mal.
Also,
it?
the Siamese. Yeah, but that's more high pitched.
A little bit.
Siamese
Yeah,
high pitch. The
it's not so
Mal is a lot like these guys. When the Mal gets going, he sounds just like that lady there who's in the cage yelling.
Oh yeah, she is
They got a real strange voice.
terrible noise.
Yeah, when they're in heat, yeah, they make an awful noise. I don't tell anybody who wants to buy them.
So I'm absolutely certain in my mind that they are a genuine wildcat, and possibly
So
a
is my
new cat to all the ones known, because
And that'd be
another
the first
thing.
time since 18 something or other they discovered a new cat. If it's a new
Another
cat.
thing to point out is the Sokoke forest does have, I will have to be corrected on this, but I'm not really sure, but they certainly have some birds, some animals,
6 endemic birds. as
which
far as I know.
are new to science, which live in that forest and nowhere else in the world.
I have an article from the African wildlife magazine called SWA. I don't know if I sent it to you.
No.
With the 6.
You know what you need? Even a declaration from the scientific girls.
From Barbara
Yeah,
Yes.
for the fever. And she will put that they are really wild cats.
Mm.
See, the only thing she can say is that she's seen them.
She's seen them there.
You see, if you want to prove that
if
they're
we could
wildcats,
get-
you need somebody to catch one in the forest.
If we could get Bill Langridge, but I don't know where he is, but
Nobody
we can
knows where he is.
make out and try and find out
Because
where
we've
he
got
is.
another man, Tony Archer, who traps
Tony
things
Archer,
for
yeah.
zoos and things.
And
He helped me last time when I tried to get them out of the country. He helped me by contacting Kenya Airways.
But you mustn't say that, because it mustn't be, as this is all between us, mustn't be known that we are trying to export wild animals.
No, otherwise we'd be in big trouble.
'Cause that's not
With
allowed.
domestic cats.
Chiedi alcune notizie anche della foresta di Sokoke, perché poi noi la troviamo sull'Atlante. Chiedi a lei.
Can you tell us anything about the Sokoke forest?
David's the expert on that.
Ask David.
Yeah, he's got the cat, yeah.
Can you give us 5 minutes on who is Jimmy Slater?
Who is Jenny Slater?
That's a long story. We have
Well,
to start right back at the beginning, Jenny.
I really don't know who I
Start
am.
right.
We
Start where you
can
were
write an
born.
encyclopedia if you want.
Well,
Where
my
was Jenny born?
my family are pioneers, or were. They're all dead now. And my grandparents were all pioneers of Kenya in the old days.
They came from England.
From England originally. And my grandfather sort of opened up Malindi here north of Watamu. And my father was probably the sort of top horseman in Kenya and used to ride and train and play polo, do everything with horses. They were magic in his hands and he did everything. He was very well known. And then
What was his name?
Sonny Bumpus. And then my husband, I married David Slater, and he was the grandson of Ewart Grogan, who was the first white man to walk from Cape Town to Cairo for the hand of his lady.
10 bob for the phone
Which
call.
was,
Yes.
there are
I've only
lots
got
of
200
books
bob
written
now.
about him. There's one called Cape to Cairo,
Just go in.
The Man from the
Caught
Cape,
shilling change.
and the legendary Grogan. And he was a very famous man in pioneering days in Africa.
What do you mean he walked there for the hand of his bride? That was part of a bet? Or
Well, he was at Cambridge University in England, and he was a bit of a a wag, I think the word is, isn't it, David?
Yes, a
Anyway.
bit about playboy. Playboy.
Anyway, he had a row with his tutor, so he shut a goat in his tutor's room over the weekend, and the goat ate and peed on everything in his room. And so he was sent away from Cambridge. And so the family of this girl that he was chatting up, who were quite well off in New Zealand, were very upset, and they said, "No way are you going to marry this awful young man," you see. So he said, "Well, I will prove that I can do something nobody else can do." He said, "I will walk from one end of Africa to the other." And they said, "Okay, if you do that." This was in 1890 or something. They said, "If you do that, you can marry her." So he did. It took him 3 years or something, but he eventually got to the other end. I think he met Stanley and Speke and all that lot somewhere. They all died of black malaria or whatever it was. And anyway, he made it in the end, and he married her. And then he came and lived out here. And then he had 4 daughters. He was very sour. He never had any sons. And my husband was his eldest grandson, but because he'd never had any sons, he had a down on boys and said boys had to earn their own living and girls could get all the money. So
That's a good plan.
So that was the beginning of that. And then David and I got married, and we used to live under Kilimanjaro, actually, on some of Grogan's enormous estates there, his Sisal estates, when we were first married. And then we went to Molo, Turi, which was the White Highlands, and David and I tried to farm, which we did quite successfully. And he became president of the Guernsey Society, which is a breed of cow. And
Still some of Jenny's cows out on the road out here. The rest.
no, those are not mine. They used to be.
They used to be, yeah.
And then we eventually gave up the farm and came down here and started running a fishing boat. Honey Lulu, who's very well known all over the world. Caught all the sort of biggest fish and been operating, made a lot of the records, yeah. And then I used to always be artistic at school. I got distinctions and things in school certificate, but I never used it. I used to use it as a hobby. And eventually someone out here said, you should show your paintings, because they thought they were quite good. And I was invited over to Texas, San Antonio Game Coin, where I showed some paintings of big game fish that I did. And from then on it went into producing paintings for game fish, which is a sort of top fishing book in Europe, produced in France, and various other magazines, Marlin magazine from America, and Strike magazine in England, and various things. And now I'm sitting at home sort of doing that.
About how long ago did you come to Guatemala?
Oh, my father came here in 57, I think it was. And we've got this plot there, and I think we moved down here about 75, something like that. And then we've been running Honolulu since then.
When did Kenya become independent, and how's the time to...
Glory be, I don't know, was it about 61 or 60, something like that? I really can't
You have
remember.
two children on your...
I've got 2 sons. One is a pilot, and one is he was in the Navy in submarines, but he's now in investment banking in England. No daughters. I always wanted daughters, but no such luck. And that was it. Oh, I used to ride a lot of horses and show things and win races and champion hacks and show jumping and anything a horse could do, I could do, or vice versa, whichever. But I gave that up and I started fishing. And
Well, you've done a lot of fantastic safaris too with the BBC.
caught a lot of fish with, record fish and stuff. And that's really the end of me.
3 minutes from David on the Sokoke Forest.
Sokoke Forest?
Yeah.
Oh, Sokoke Forest, Sokoke Forest, Sokoke Forest. Sokoke Forest is a refugia. That means it's an island, and it's been really an island for the last few thousand years, almost since the Pleistocene era, and it's gradually an island of forest, and it's gradually grown. It's been surrounded by people for a long, long while, and gradually it has, obviously as a result of this, the species that live there have become endemic, and they're not having an outside influence. They have gone their own way, and therefore we have there 6 known species of birds which are endemic to the forest. We have several mammals which are endemic to the forest. We have the very famous sticky-legged elephant shrew, golden-backed elephant shrew, which is only found around the forest and in the forest. The famous bird is the Sokoke scops owl, which was only discovered about 15 years ago. So that's a new one. There are obviously many species of butterflies and insectivora which we don't know anything about yet, but we're obviously studying there. So there's a lot to learn about the place yet that we don't really know very much, but we're trying to preserve it for posterity. We're trying to keep the place intact, although it is under attack by many people who want to cut down the hardwoods and reforest it with quick-growing types of woods, and therefore they will break up the ecology of the area. But we're trying to preserve it.
How big is it?
It's nearly 400 square kilometers. Nearly, and the endemic species, there are 5 zones of endemic trees or soil areas. 5 zones basically, and each zone grows a different species of tree. And then, of course, the understory is different, and consequently, a lot of the bird species and the mammal species live only in certain areas where certain tree species enable them to survive there. They live on some of the scops owl, for instance, lives on a specific saltatoria, a grasshopper type species, and they only live in the Waberi, the Sinometra Waberi treed area, which is only really about 60 square kilometers of this area. So it's very small, though that owl is still living there and has developed in that area. And the same applies. The cats we don't know about. I'm not very familiar with. I've just looked at them from the outside of the forest and looked at them in terms of the influence of the outside cats, the domestic cats, where they've interbred between the domestic cats. And apart from what Jenny has had, I really have I can't say that I've ever seen them there. although I've travelled a lot through there, but certainly Barbara Simpson has, one or two other people have seen.
And the Africans have.
Yeah, the Africans call them. Yeah, the Africans, of course, know them. As soon as they look at a photograph of them, they say, Kadzonzo. They say Kadzonzo. Yes, Kadzonzo. That's a Kadzonzo cat.
Why are you
And that's
looking
what they
for
call
him?
it.
Just wait a minute.
You see?
What's your problem?
You asked for juice. Where is the forest located?
Well, the forest is between, you can virtually say, south of Malindi and north of Kilifi, and
Fairly near
it's on the. It's only less than 10 kilometers from the coast, and it then stretches approximately 20 kilometers across, and it's a sort of parallel to the road, the main road that goes from Malindi to Kilifi. So at the moment this forest is sort of parallelogram. It goes straight through. It's 20 miles across and about 20 kilometers across and about, what is it, 10 kilometers long, isn't it? 400 square kilometers.
Well,
20,
you have to,
what would it be, 40?
you have to have 20 times 20, don't you?
20 times 20 long, that's
To
right.
get 400, yeah.
That's right, it's 20, right, approximately, a bit longer.
So it's just outside of Guatemala.
Yeah. Just
Yes,
outside,
it's
it's
the
very
other
close
side
to
of the
here.
Yeah,
Very
just
close
go
to
on the
here.
other side of the road.
Very
it
close.
starts.
The north, in the past, the eastern side sort of came down to the sea. Here, virtually, there's endemic elephant there, or an elephant that's stayed there all the time. Now, of course, the growth of this area has pushed them back. They used to swim opposite where I live. The elephant used to come down and swim in the sea. All these species were certainly known around here. Leopard were known around here, now unknown.
So basically, one time you had a forest that was surrounded by people on this side, and all the animals had their back to the sea.
That's
so
right.
Nothing was coming in here, and nothing
That's
was
right.
going out.
That's right.
And up there they went.
Yeah.
What's on the other side of the forest? Savanna that just goes on forever?
Yes, it
or-
Park,
goes.
isn't it?
Well, no.
What
It's
was
just.
that?
It's now mainly Giriyama country where the Giriyama tribe live and farm. Now it's completely
It's quite
surrounded.
wild, isn't
Completely surrounded by people now. People who, and the whole place has been adjudicated by farms, small farms, small holdings, and cattle, goats. Mainly, but a large portion of the areas beyond it are now trees. They've been nut trees, cashew nut trees, mango, obviously palm
Coconuts.
trees and what have you, coconuts, all these various trees, money trees, which are surrounding the forest now. But the indigenous trees have been cut out, so obviously immediately the understory goes. So anything that's left stays inside the forest. And now, of course, that is the inroading into the forest, cutting out hardwood indigenous species is a prime target.
But that's
People
what your
who want-
camp is stopping, isn't
Well,
it?
I've got
Yeah.
a camp there on the northwestern side of the forest, and I'm as a vigil camp that I'm trying to stop the inroading there and make it into a complete national park. But I mean, 5 years I've been doing this, and it's taken. Well, I'm nearly there. I've nearly got them to agree to make it a national park or to actually gazette it. But they now at the moment are talking about only gazetting half of it. So that means it leaves a very large area which won't be under wildlife and tourism. In other words, wildlife won't be under management. The Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources are really only interested. They are called the Forest Department, and their basic interest is trees, and they look at them as a renewable resource asset, and some of them think, okay, we can cut the whole damn lot down and put up gum trees or something like this in replacement, and still keep growing. So I mean, this is where the danger comes, and of course this is where you kill off all the endemic species that are very valuable, and the massive hardwood trees. But
I'll have to show it to Camp
Wonderful
David has
trees.
planted one of these hardwood trees.
Yeah, in different areas, of course, these hardwood trees will not grow in certain areas of the forest. I mean, the Apsalia will only grow this side of the forest, towards the east. Won't grow where my camp is. I've tried it, but the tree growth has been about half an inch in 5 years. And the same happens to the Cinnamatra, which is my side, which won't grow the other side. Rainfall, soil species, soil types grow different species, and of course rainfall. The rainfall differs as much as probably as much as 20-30 centimeters, you see, in my place to this side, Malindi side, where we get over 100 centimeters a year, over a meter, well over. On my side, probably half of that. So there we are. It's to do with prevailing winds, monsoon winds, and what have you. Relief rain. But all these things are many things which we've got to protect there. But the cat species, you know, is amazing. And I've never seen it else.
I might just point out that when I got the cats, they seemed to spend a lot of their time in the trees as opposed to on the ground, and most of them were much happier up in the trees all the time.
And they didn't bother the birds.
And they didn't seem to bother the birds. And you know, when I first had them, there were birds' nests and things in the trees in front of the house, and the cats were actually there and they could see them, and all they would eat, all they were interested in was the butterflies, the grasshoppers, lizards, bugs, anything like that. They didn't seem to bother the birds, which was quite nice, really.
But you see, another reason probably maybe why I haven't seen them is because the Giriyama love to eat them. I mean, they do eat them, and that's it. I mean, they eat the
How do you spell the name of this tribe?
The Giriyama.
Yeah.
Giriyama. Giriyama.
That's
Giriyama.
the tribe.
That's the tribe.
Yeah.
But they eat the golden-backed elephant.
They eat
Shrew
rats.
stew.
They eat everything.
Shrew stew is good. And so all these little species which run around there are all for catching and for the bud. So I mean that could be a reason. Certainly
Well, even
since I've been
David's
there
house
5
girl
years,
said her granddad used to eat them.
the shrews have disappeared at an alarming rate, and I see so very few now. And I've reported to Nairobi all the time saying the shrews are going now. All the red forest duiker are going. Very lovely, rare species of forest duiker. Beautiful little red forest duiker. They're virtually all gone. I mean, like the leopard, which was there. There's no leopard. I haven't seen a leopard there. So I've been there. I've looked
You
very
had
carefully,
one
but there
rhino
used to
last
be.
year, didn't you?
I had rhino there when I first moved my vigil camp in there, and I reported. I said, "Come on, let's get going and report. Conserve this quick." And before, you know, in 2 years, I kept an eye on it, and it was gone. So, you know, the rhino have gone from there. There were years ago, there were sable antelope,
Yeah,
and they've all gone.
as far as we know.
Well, there
There's
is.
still elephant there, because I saw one.
Oh yeah, there's
yeah,
elephant and
yeah,
buffalo.
we see the elephant.
I've got elephant and buffalo at my water hole all the time
Yeah, we see
when there's
them.
water in it. But what I'm saying is
The
put water
droppings.
back in plant water, and we've got permanent water there, and then we can see what we've got in the area. Quite as simple as that.